Shalom. Whether on the Seder night you happen to pour out wine or use your pinky, but it's one of the highlights of the Seder in which we remind ourselves of the Eser Makos by spilling out 10 times. After we finish that, Rabbi Yehuda Yinotein Bahem Simanim, Tatzach, Adash, Ba'achav. We have another 3 spritzes over here. And the question is, what's Rabbi Yehuda trying to tell us? Why does he have to give Simanim? Is it just that we should have another opportunity to spill out 3 times because it's so much fun? Or perhaps there was something deeper to this. The fact is that Rabbi Yehuda giving us 3 different categories is really based upon textual understanding. If you read the psukim dealing with the makos, you'll notice that the text itself will split up the makos into 3 different groups. And how do you see this? Because of where Moshe places himself when warning Paro about the upcoming Makkah. So if we start off the first group, Tatzach, or it's Dam, Tzfadei, and Kinim, Moshe approaches Paro in the Nile, and he warns him at the Nile that there's going to be the first Makkah. The second Makkah of Tzfadei is a warning to Paro in the palace, and the Makkah of Kinim, the warning is nowhere. It's a trick question, the warning is nowhere. And that's the first grouping. And then afterwards we'll see in Orov, Dever, and Shkin, and Adash, the same pattern repeats itself. First there's the warning at the Nile, the palace, no warning, and lastly Ba'achav as well. Barad at the Nile, Arben, the palace, Kosher, there's no warning whatsoever. So it seems that it's set up based upon these warnings. We see that there are 3 different categories. Rashi, we know, points out that Moshe warns Paro at the Nile in order to lock it into Paro that Moshe knows that that he really is not a god, and that he, like any other human, has to use the bathrooms of the Nile in the secrecy of mourning. The Maharal just says it's a matter of due process. It's a matter of honor that's supposed to be given over to a king. You don't come into the king's palace and threaten him off the bat. First you have to give him a threat that's outside of the home, outside of the palace, and then afterwards you increase with the threat by entering the palace itself. But we do see that there is a pattern that exists which is designating these makos as being 3 different categories. The Maharal says that the purpose for this is to remind us, or to teach Mitzrayim at this time, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually has dominion over the entire existence. And whenever you have a continuum of anything, it comes according to the Maharal. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, which is 3, the number 3. It reminds us of a continuum. And also, therefore, if you talk about the physical existence, you have a beginning, you have a middle, and an end. 3 categories. Within each category also you'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's why each category is also of 3 different strata. So like this. If you're talking about divide the existence into the terrain, and on the other end the heavens, and that which goes in between, those are your 3 categories. If you take each category, let's first take the terrain. Well, the beginning is going to be the water, the end will be the land itself, and then the middle is going to be amphibians, that which what goes in between. Dam, Tzfadeya, Kinim. Dam is a Makkah on the water, Tzfadeya is amphibians, Kinim, that's being on the land itself. In other words, each one of these Makot shows Kadosh Baruch Hu's dominion over that strata of the physical existence. And the same thing as far as the next level. Orov, Dev, and Shkin. First, we're going to have a Makkah with the use of the animals, Orov, a Makkah upon the animals, Dever, and then afterwards a Makkah, a plague upon mankind himself in Shkin. And lastly, Barad, Arben, Choshech. We have the heavens, we have a Makkah, which comes from the clouds, the Arben from above the clouds, and afterwards the Choshech, which will take care of all the celestial beings. In other words, what we see here, starting from the very, very bottom of the physical existence, all the way up to the heavens, the top, the end, the other end of physical existence, we see that Kadosh Baruch Hu was able to take control of that strata of existence, stop its creation and recreate it. What we have over here is demonstrations of God's dominion over the entire existence. And once we finish with this, showing God's dominion over physical, then we take care of the spiritual, and we add in the 10th Makkah, and that be the one of the Bechorot. So the Maharal says the number 10 is inclusive of each unit is important, it's all right, but together it teaches Mitzrayim that Hashem is the one who rules. A similar idea, again using these 3 different categories, similar in that it shows God's dominion, but it's a greater or more detailed in the education that's being given here. Is, for example, the Abarbanel, which will tell you that if you note again textually that the first group of 3 start off with B'zot Tida Ki Ani Hashem, that this is an education. These makos come to educate Mitzrayim that B'zot Tida, know that I am God, that I exist, because Mitzrayim denied the existence of God. Once you know God exists, well, maybe you'll say God created the world, He exists, but He walked away from it. No, the second group of makos begin L'man Tida Ki Ani Hashem B'kerev Haaretz. That I am God, not only do I exist, but I still am involved B'kerev Haaretz, in the world itself. I'm involved here, which really, if God cares what's happened, He's involved in what happens in this world. That's a demand upon mankind to do things the way God, in other words, a demand for morality. And lastly, the last group of three, Bavor Tida Ki Ein Kamoni B'chol Haaretz. That only God does God exist, and that He's involved in what goes on in this world. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all powerful. There's nothing else besides Hashem. Ein Kamoni B'chol Haaretz. And then in itself also was an education that each one of these groupings of makos taught Mitzrayim. In addition to teaching Mitzrayim, the Pasuk tells us, V'yadatim Ki Ani Hashem Elokeichem, that this is also an education for Am Yisrael. And that we're able to understand, Am Yisrael itself also understands we have a kesher, we have a connection with God. But we do want to also internalize the message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists, and that He cares what happens in this world, to the point that He removes Am Yisrael from Mitzrayim, takes us to Har Sinai, the demand for morality, and that there's Ein Kamoni, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all powerful. And therefore, as we come to these Pesukim, and come to these Parshas, and we talk about the morality, we talk about the Makot, it reminds us, Am Yisrael, of these same messages. And the quote of Hasidic master, the Rebbe Misonim brings it, that we say, He'emanti ki adaber ani yisimo. He'emanti ki adaber. The more I talk of this topic, He'emanti, the more I have an emunah, the more I have understanding. And thus, even though there's a Zecher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim on a daily basis, very short, curt, words, but it comes to one night a year, we sit back in our chairs, we raise up our cups, and we talk the entire night, an additional mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, where we talk up these topics in order that we should internalize these messages. It's true on the Seder night, it's true also when we get to these Parshas, to recognize what a HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, and therefore to understand ourselves, the Jewish people, and for us to be able to link in more easily into what our mission statement is, and for us to be able to accomplish that what it means to be a Jew. Shabbat Shalom.